Welcome to Go Green Radio, everybody. I'm so glad that you could join us today. Our guest today has become a good friend over the last year. Her organization, the American Lung Association, has been granted an EPA grant along with the nonprofit organization that I work for, the Go Green Initiative. We are both working to improve indoor air quality in schools across America. And Molly Ryan is our guest today. She has been with the American Lung Association for quite some time and now leads their nationwide indoor air quality initiatives. She has a background in tobacco prevention and control, and she's currently developing and managing some of their key programs that equip healthcare professionals and target indoor air quality improvements in both homes and schools. She holds a Master of Public Health from UW, go Huskies, and she's here today to talk to us about some of the resources and services that the American Lung Association has, particularly for schools. And I'm really excited to welcome her. Thanks for joining us, Molly. So glad to have you today.
Thanks, Jill, for the invitation and the opportunity to be here. I'm excited to have this talk.
Me too. So let's start at the very beginning. What are some of the most common indoor air quality problems in schools?
Yeah, when we talk about indoor air quality, I think as a topic overall, there it can be quite a complex thing to sort of unpack. There are so many different factors that determine whether the air we breathe indoors is good or bad. Everything from really the age of the building to occupancy, behavior, that's what we are doing inside of our buildings, all the way to climate and weather conditions, building design, and so much more, all contribute to our indoor air quality. So it can be quite complex, and this can be a tough question to answer.
Mhm.
IAQ problems can really vary greatly from region to region, state to state, and school to school. But if I were to boil it down to three core issues, I would say that those are moisture, inadequate ventilation, and chemical pollutants. So when we look at these a little bit more closely, when we're looking at moisture, excess moisture and water intrusion can be a major problem for schools. We see schools experiencing too much moisture in the air in our humid climates, and if their HVAC systems are not able to effectively dehumidify the air or draw out that moisture from the air, we see a lot of excess moisture. We also see other schools dealing with roof leaks, window leaks, or condensation buildup that's really due to poor HVAC settings. So when the building materials in our schools, or really any building, like carpet, ceiling tiles, get wet and stay wet, they can become breeding grounds for things like mold. That excess moisture also can attract pests like rodents and cockroaches, which are some significant indoor pollutants. The second issue we see is inadequate ventilation. We do know, and there's been plenty of research to show that our indoor air can be up to 2 to 5 times more polluted than our outdoor air. And ventilation is really the best tool in our toolbox for diluting those indoor air pollutants. But because many schools' HVAC systems are aging or perhaps they're undersized for the current occupancy levels, these schools often struggle to provide sufficient ventilation. So this lack of effective air exchange, where you're exchanging that fresh outdoor air with the polluted indoor air, really allows the polluted air to reach concentrated unhealthy levels in indoors. And the final common issue is chemical pollutants, or VOCs, which stands for volatile organic compounds. And these are chemicals that vaporize at room temperature, and they come from everyday items like cleaning supplies, personal care products, art materials, and even furniture and the supplies we use to build schools. And in a school setting, there are hundreds and hundreds of potential sources of VOCs. So while these issues, moisture, ventilation, and VOCs sound daunting, the really good news is that they can be very manageable and that schools can take steps to create an environment that is really healthy and conducive to learning.
Absolutely. And we're going to dive into some of those strategies in a little bit, but I want to make sure that all of our listeners understand the so what of all of this, how this impacts the human beings, the little lungs, the little brains, and the staff members who are at schools. How do some of these common indoor air quality problems impact students and staff while they're at school?
Yeah, that's a great and important question. So, we know that exposure to indoor air pollutants can harm health and learning. Since Americans spend about 90% of our time indoors and children spend nearly half of their waking hours in school, the air that they breathe in school buildings is a significant driver of their overall health. So, this is super important because children are highly susceptible to air pollution. Biologically, they have narrower airways and a higher respiratory rate compared to adults, meaning they breathe at a faster rate. And so they're inhaling more of that pollution per pound of body weight. And because their organs and immune system are still developing, exposure to toxins and pollutants during these formative years can have a really profound and lasting impact on their overall and long-term health. So, young people are more vulnerable to exposure to poor indoor air quality. And in the short term, poor IAQ can cause a variety of health effects, both for students and staff. They may experience things like headaches, dizziness, fatigue, irritation of the eyes, nose, throat, shortness of breath, or chest tightness. But individuals with sensitivities or allergies may experience more intense symptoms. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about asthma specifically. So, at the American Lung Association, it's one of the many things that we focus on. But nearly 1 in 13 school age children has asthma. So, that's about 2 kiddos per classroom. And there is substantial evidence to show that our indoor environmental exposures to allergens such as dust mites, pests, and molds can play a role in triggering asthma symptoms. Other triggers that we see include diesel exhaust from school buses or other vehicles, chemicals from cleaning products, and so much more. So these triggers are very common in the school building. So it really is no surprise that asthma is the number one cause of missed school days due to a chronic illness. But when we're really thinking about exposure to poor IAQ, we have to look beyond the health impacts as well. When kiddos are out of school due to those asthma exacerbations, those asthma attacks, or respiratory infections, both of which can be a result of exposure to poor IAQ, they lose that in critical instruction time. So even if they are feeling well enough to go to school, poor indoor air quality impairs concentration, processing speed, and decision making. Obviously, those are things that are really critical in the school
Hmm.
setting. And we see lower standardized test scores and overall lower academic performance. I'm glad you mentioned teacher and staff because they are also equally affected. Teachers with underlying health conditions like asthma or allergies, they may experience more missed work days and reduced productivity during the day when they are in school. So the takeaway here is really that we cannot separate health from learning. And if the air in the school isn't good, students and staff can't be at their best or really even be at their desks. So it's incredibly hard to succeed in a classroom when you're struggling to breathe or focus on the lessons.
Absolutely. Now, besides the obvious, long-term impact of, impaired cognitive ability while you're in the classroom and the learning loss that can be experienced, are there long-term effects outside of that, that poor indoor air quality can have on a human body?
The short answer is yes, definitely. Exposure to poor indoor air quality, especially during childhood when that body is still developing, can lead to chronic health issues that persist well into adulthood. So some of the most well documented long-term effects is the development and worsening of chronic lung disease. So it's well known that exposures like mold and dust can trigger asthma attacks, but research is showing that long-term exposure to these pollutants is actually linked to the initial development of asthma in otherwise healthy children. Second, it also can impact lung development. when kiddos are exposed on a long-term basis to things like particulate matter and nitrogen dioxide, it can actually stunt their lung growth. So this means that children may never reach their full respiratory potential, if you will, and
Hmm.
it leaves them with permanently reduced lung capacity as they age. But the long-term health effects aren't just limited to the respiratory system. We do see that things like particulate matter is a major contributor to cardiovascular diseases and also increases the risk of heart attacks and strokes. Additionally, prolonged exposure to some VOCs like formaldehyde, as well as radon and asbestos, can really significantly increase the risk of developing cancer. So it's really important to think about the impact of this work in the long term. So if we can improve the air that our children are breathing now, we're not just making them a little more comfortable and healthier today, we are literally protecting their health for years to come.
Well said. I mean, that is so impactful. And I really hope that our listeners are able to kind of ingest that information in a way that makes them want to take action, which we'll talk about in a little bit. We'll talk about how we can take action, each and every one of us. But one of the other things that, you mentioned earlier was that this air exchange, bringing fresh air in, and exchanging it with the polluted indoor air quality. But what if a school is located in a place with poor outdoor air quality? How does polluted outdoor air impact indoor air quality?
Yeah, I think it's can sometimes be easy to think about indoor air and air as two separate things, but they are intrinsically linked. Outdoor air doesn't stay outdoors, and in fact, you don't want it to. Buildings really need to breathe. We need
Mhm.
to bring in that outdoor air for good indoor air quality. But it is a bit of a double-edged sword, as you alluded to. Because if that outdoor air is polluted and that air is not being properly filtered, it can worsen our indoor air quality. So I want to talk just a few minutes about some of the most concerning pollutants we see in the outdoors that can travel indoors. The first one being particulate matter. Generally, particulate matter is considered to be the most dangerous form of air pollution. Folks might hear it as PM 2.5 or might know it as PM 2.5. And these are really just microscopic particles that come from diesel buses, industry, wildfire smoke. And these particles are small enough to be inhaled and travel deep into the lungs and even enter the bloodstream. PM 2.5 exposure can cause all sorts of health problems, including the worsening of respiratory and cardiovascular disease. The next two pollutants are gases, and the main concern is around nitrogen dioxide and ozone. So, nitrogen dioxide forms when fossil fuels like coal, oil, natural gas, or diesel are burned. And the primary source of nitrogen dioxide is vehicle emissions. It's our buses, it's our other vehicles out on the road. Ozone, you might remember from, sixth
Hmm.
grade science class, while it's super helpful in the upper atmosphere, it helps to protect us against the sun's harmful UV rays. At the ground level, it can cause serious health problems and actually it can really harm lung health specifically because it chemically reacts with the lung tissue, damaging it much like a sunburn on our skin. So ozone also comes from vehicle emissions, but also comes from smokestacks, factories, and a other host of pollution sources. So these, outdoor pollutants by themselves can be harmful, but when they enter our buildings, they contribute to poor indoor air quality. But what's more is that these pollutants actually interact with our indoor pollutants to create entirely new pollutants. So it's a very complex system at play here, but it is important to consider when we're addressing indoor air quality, we cannot ignore the outdoor air quality.
Absolutely. We've got to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we have much more with Molly Ryan of the American Lung Association. So don't go away, folks. There's more Go Green Radio right after this. Welcome back to Go Green Radio. If you're just tuning in, let me catch you up. Our guest today is Molly Ryan with the American Lung Association. The American Lung Association has been working for decades on everything to protect our health from pollutants that we might breathe in. And she has worked on tobacco prevention. Now she's working on indoor air quality. She has a master's in public health from the University of Washington. So we are in the best possible hands to unpack some of the indoor air quality issues impacting schools. And Molly, right before the break, we were talking about how outdoor air pollution, and we know that that is something that can happen, regionally on a routine basis, or for instance, in the case of wildfires, just every once in a while in an area that normally might have good outdoor air quality. And so, do you find, and I'm sure this is changing as climate change impacts outdoor air quality, but are you finding that there are populations in the United States that have a greater burden than others when it comes to poor indoor air quality?
Yes, absolutely. And it's not restricted just to indoor air quality, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when we talk about poor air quality in general, we do have to acknowledge that the burden is not shared equally. So there are sort of two major groups that experience a disproportionate impact, and their risks often overlap, and their risks can be compounded as well. So the first are individuals who are simply more vulnerable to those pollutants due to their biology. So this
Mm-hmm.
includes older adults, pregnant individuals, people with pre-existing conditions like heart disease and asthma, and as I shared earlier, children are also highly vulnerable to the pollution because their bodies are still developing, they have that higher respiratory rate, and they just breathe in more pollution. So these people are biologically more susceptible to poor air quality and have a much higher risk of these health complications as a result of their exposures.
Mm-hmm.
The second group really involves individuals who face higher levels of exposure due to pardon me, due to systemic and socioeconomic factors. So
Mm-hmm.
research has shown that people of color are more likely to be exposed to air pollution and more likely to suffer harm to their health from that pollution than white people. There's also evidence that having low income or living in low income areas put people at increased risk from air pollution, although that correlation is not as strong as with race and ethnicity that we just looked at. And
Mm-hmm.
specific for schools, there's extensive research that shows that Black, Hispanic, and Latino students are more likely to attend schools that are located near high traffic areas, industrial areas, and other major outdoor pollution sources. We also see that high poverty districts often lack the tax base for major capital investments, spending about 37% less on facility maintenance than wealthier districts. So as a result, those students are more likely to be in classrooms that have those, aging and failing HVAC system, mold issues, or things like legacy toxins like lead and asbestos. So ultimately, these disparities really mean that the most vulnerable students are carrying the heaviest burden.
Mm-hmm. And that is a fact that, as we start to roll out some of these programs that you and I talk about all the time, and we're going to talk about on the show, that we take those facts, that data into account as we look at, how we can have the greatest impact. I know that the American Lung Association has been involved in indoor air quality in schools for a long time. Talk to us about some of the work you all have done prior to receiving the recent EPA grant, which we're going to talk about in a minute, but help us understand your history of success in this area.
Yeah, the Lung Association really does have a long and rich history of working on indoor air quality in schools. In fact, 20 years ago, our organization co-wrote the EPA's Tool for School program, which, as you know, is really a
Mm-hmm.
keystone program in the IAQ in schools world. Some of our staff even served as master trainers for that program way back when. Um,
Mm-hmm.
We've also done a tremendous amount of work focused on asthma, both in terms of reducing environmental asthma triggers, but also in disease education and management. So, controlling environmental asthma triggers is really synonymous with improving indoor air quality. So, addressing indoor air pollutants works to reduce those asthma triggers for individuals living with asthma. So, some of the programs that our organization has either led or collaborated on include things like the Healthier Learners Asthma Institute, which was an 8-year CDC funded best practices in school based health office asthma and trigger management program. We had an asthma clipboard program, which was a partnership to train school PE and coaches nationwide on recognition and management of asthma symptoms in schools. We've created Asthma Basics, which is a free online sort of asthma 101 learning module that's available in both English and in Spanish. We also have a number of school-based programs focused on health, one of them being Open Airways for Schools and Kickin' Asthma. And these are really
Mhm.
asthma self-management programs for youth. So really empowering youth to better manage their lung disease. We also launched the Asthma Friendly Schools Initiative in 2007, and that's really a
Mhm.
comprehensive program meant to support asthma management in schools. And it does do a lot to highlight the importance of reducing those environmental asthma triggers. More
Mhm.
recently, our team has authored an IAQ for Schools guide and has published a case study where we partnered with a small school district in Minnesota to conduct a comprehensive assessment of their IAQ. And so we do really have a rich history working in asthma and IAQ in schools, and that's really set us on a strong foundation for our current project, the Clean Air School Challenge, which I know we'll get in a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things, because I've been doing my work with the Go Green Initiative since 2002, so I am well aware of the wonderful tools and resources that you all have either delivered to the country on your own or in collaboration with others. EPA's Tools for Schools is one of my favorites. And we've used it for years. And I think one of the things that I see is like, why isn't every school district in America already managing their indoor air quality? And so, based on your experience and your organization's experience, what do schools need the most in order to provide clean indoor air quality for their students and staff?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jill. So I think if you were to ask any school leader if they wanted clean air for their kids, their response would be a unanimous yes, right? Like
Hmm.
I think we'd be hard pressed to find a school leader who wants to hear no to that question. But the reason why every school isn't already managing IAQ, it isn't a lack of will. I think schools face a lot of really unique IAQ challenges. So when we look at the schools in the United States, we see an aging infrastructure. The average age of the main instructional building is nearly 50 years old. And about half of the schools need to replace multiple building systems, whether it be HVAC or plumbing system. And schools are not just like office building or residential homes when it comes to IAQ.
Hmm.
They are very densely occupied and they are complex environments with a really multitude of pollution sources. So you think about what's happening within our schools. You have chemistry labs, wood shop, art rooms, swimming pools, gyms. All of these are, sort of contributing their own unique chemical and biological, signature, if you will,
Hmm.
making it a really complex environment. And we all know school budgets are tight, and preventative maintenance can be one of the first thing that is on the chopping block. We do see school staff are doing incredible work with what they have, but they are constantly doing more with less. So I think, when we think about why every school in the United States is not tackling this problem, I think it really boils down to resources,
Hmm.
funding and capacity. So there's a lot of challenges to overcome, a lot of work to be put in to tackle the IAQ. And in my opinion, I think schools really need money and technical support to navigate those challenges.
Now let's get into what you're doing now, because I'm excited to talk about this. How does your current program, that's funded by an $8 million grant from EPA, address this gap for schools? Tell us about the challenge.
Happy to. So, the Lung Associations program, which is funded by EPA, is the Clean Air School Challenge. And through this program, we are able to offer schools technical assistance and mini grants to address IAQ. So really speaking to those gaps I spoke to earlier. But before I dive in too much, I do want to take a step back, and I'm sure your listeners have heard you talk about, this program overall and EPA and the wonderful partnerships we have. But Lung Association is one of 5 grantees who have received funding from the EPA to address indoor air quality and energy efficiency in school. The purpose of this EPA funding and what all 5 grantees are working towards is to increase the number of K through 12 schools in low income, disadvantaged, and tribal communities across the country with comprehensive indoor air quality management plans. These plans are a really effective tool that schools can use to ensure they have a very intentional and proactive approach to addressing indoor air quality. So we've incorporated energy management into the mix because we know that strategies to address IAQ can have a direct impact on energy use and vice versa. So for example, energy efficiency measures like creating tight buildings where you're wanting to minimize that external air exchange is great for conserving energy, but not great for indoor air quality.
Mhm.
So you do have to be very intentional about addressing both energy use and IAQ in tandem. So back to the Lung Association's Clean Air School Challenge. We call it CASC for short, and this is an initiative that supports schools nationwide in working towards development of an energy efficient IAQ management plan. So CASC is a recognition, training, and technical assistance program that provides a structured path for schools to address that energy use and IAQ. Our program meets schools where they are and can provide assistance and support both to schools who may just be getting started on their IAQ journey, as well as schools who are well on their way. So, schools that sign up to participate can receive recognition for their efforts, education and training opportunities, technical assistance, peer mentorship, access to other Lung Association programs and services. But they also have the opportunity to participate in exclusive offerings like our learning collaboratives, as well as our mini grant program. I'm going to talk about our mini grant program throughout the rest of our time together. But I do want to mention it here that schools can apply for and receive up to $9,500 to support their IAQ efforts. And to ensure we really spread these resources out, we've set a cap of 10 awards per funding level per district. So that means that a single district, they can coordinate their schools to bring in $95,000 to support their students and staff in breathing cleaner air.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, we've got to take a quick commercial break, but we are going to cover the Clean Air School Challenge in detail in the next segment. So don't go away, folks. There's more Go Green Radio right after this. Welcome back to Go Green Radio, everybody. So glad that you could join us. If you're just tuning in, let me catch you up. Our guest today is Molly Ryan with the American Lung Association. We're talking about indoor air quality in schools, and we're talking about their program, the Clean Air School Challenge, that school districts across the United States can get involved in to help improve indoor air quality in their school and school district. So, Molly, talk to us about some of the things that you guys have done in year one, what's in store for year two of this 5-year grant and the Clean Air School Challenge.
Yeah. So our year one for the Lung Association's Clean Air School Challenge was really focused on building the foundation of the program. So we put together a really fantastic team of passionate and knowledgeable Lung Association staff who have really built this program from the ground up. So year one was really focused on launching an awareness initiative to increase awareness around IAQ issues in school and why energy efficient IAQ management plans are an effective tool for addressing it. Our team has worked to develop and publish a number of fantastic fact sheets on these topics, really covering a range of topics from IAQ impacts on learning, IAQ and asthma. We have an IAQ tips for teachers fact sheet. We've also hosted some trainings and webinars on various IAQ and energy use topics. We've also done a tremendous amount of work conducting outreach and sharing these resources and tools with local asthma coalitions, state and local health departments, departments of education, and many, many more. So the Cleaner School Challenge launched officially on July 1st, and in the first 3 months, we had 29 schools sign up to participate. And by the end of 2025, just here in a couple weeks, we will have nearly triple that amount. So we're super excited at the level of interest in the program so far and are excited to see it grow well into year two, which is a great segue to what we've got planned. We've done a tremendous amount of work at looking at state statutes relating to IAQ and energy management plans in schools. So we did a lot of work reaching out to schools that have statutes that either recommend or require indoor air quality management plans to really learn about what that looks like on the ground. We compiled our findings, and we just published a report with those findings, which can be found on our website lung.org/CASC. That's CASC. Later on this year, we are hosting a cask symposium in April. So this symposium will reach a really broad audience, not only K through 12 school personnel, but also individuals from public health, environmental health, and others working in the IAQ health and school space. The content will be really focused on showing and sharing the evidence of the impact of poor IAQ in schools, making the connection between IAQ and energy efficiency, and demonstrating the need for and benefits of those and energy efficient IAQ management plans. The symposium is going to be virtual. It's going to be free. So I welcome all the listeners to, visit our website and sign up to join our CASC interest list to be updated when our registration opens. We're
Ooh,
also
I'm going to
launching.
do that right away.
Yeah.
No, that's going to be great. And how
Yeah.
21st century of you guys to make it
Yeah.
virtual so that people are, able to do their due, but also come to the symposium. I love it. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we just recognize that some schools, have some barriers to traveling, and
Yep.
we just feel like we can really reach a wider audience when we take the show virtual.
Yep.
And we just got a number of really fantastic, trainings and educational assets that we plan to release throughout the year. So again, schools that are signing up for CASC will be privy to all of this, and will have access to all of these resources. But we are making a number of these resources widely available for anybody interested in this as a topic.
I love it. Now let's look into our crystal ball for a minute. By the end of year 5 of this grant, what do you want to achieve? What do you want, and what does the American Lung Association want to see as a result of all this work by the end of year 5?
Mm. Yeah, I wish I had a crystal ball. So maybe you could share yours. But by the end of year five, our goal on paper is to have partnered with 1,500 schools across the country. But it's so much more than that number, right? So
Right.
we're really wanting to ensure that this isn't just a one-off. We're not working with schools to improve their IAQ for one semester, for one
Mhm.
year, or even for, just the life of this grant. We're really working to support schools in institutionalizing IAQ management and making IAQ an integral part of everything they do now and into the future. So we're working to build capacity of school personnel so that even when this project ends in 4 years, those staff have the skills and knowledge to continue their efforts to effectively manage IAQ at their school. And even after those staff leave or retire, the energy efficient IAQ management plan that school has in place and other systems that they have in place sustain the work. So it's
Yeah.
not really, just about improving the daily lives of the thousands of students who attend these schools now. It's really about the hundreds of thousands of students yet to come.
Mhm.
And one thing we're really, working to convey to our schools is that impactful change doesn't always require a multi-million dollar HVAC overhaul. Sure, that's a really effective way to improve a
Sure.
school's IAQ, but it's just not a feasible solution for many schools. So, what schools need to realize is that they can utilize low cost and no cost strategies to improve their indoor air quality. So, this boils down to, implementing policies, practices, and programs that reduce the source of pollution, improve ventilation, and enhance filtration. Just some examples are things like adopting anti-idling policies for buses and in the school pickup line.
Mhm.
Practicing safer cleaning products or practices to ensure that the products we're using to clean our classrooms aren't going to cause harm to either our health or the environment. So, if purchase isn't in the cards for a school, there are simple things that a school can do to make a noticeable difference in their IAQ.
Absolutely. And honestly, I mean, that's something that you all, as you partnered with EPA on tools for schools so many years ago, emphasized is that, leaning into preventing some of these pollutants from getting into the indoor air to begin with, is
Mhm.
something that really is effective. I love to tell the story of a school district that we worked with. It's the Go Green Initiative years and years ago. It was a brand new building. Everything was state of the art, big bond measure that the town had passed to build this new school, and yet everybody in the building after they commissioned it was getting, colds, flu, allergies, asthma. It was really, really bad, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with the HVAC system. And there was nothing wrong with the HVAC system. We did a little walk around the outside. We found that the teachers and students had planted a beautiful flower garden right underneath the air intake.
Yeah.
And that flower garden was full of flowers that are known to trigger allergies. And so when we moved the little flower garden, boom, the building
Amazing.
performed as designed.
Yeah.
And it's just those simple things that
Mhm.
really can make a difference. Now, um, I know that, you and I are partnered, our organizations are partnered. Who are some of the other partners that you're working with, and how do those relationships help you meet the goals of your grant?
Yeah, our fellow grantees also receiving EPA funding have been absolutely phenomenal partners. Not only your organization, Go Green Initiative, but the U.S. Green Building Council's Center for Green Schools, New York
Mhm.
State Department of Health's School Environmental Health Program, and the University of Utah. And it's been just such an honor to be working alongside such wonderful partners. I think, my experience is that it's just such a cool thing that each of our organization are working on our own projects with our own set of deliverables, but we're all working towards that same goal of supporting schools and adopting energy efficient IAQ management plans. And what we've realized is that we're stronger together and we've been able to do some really close coordination and collaboration amongst ourselves. So we're not working in these silos, we're not working in isolation. We're all talking the same talk. And really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if a school signs up to partner with the Lung Association or Go Green Initiative or any of our other grantees, because that school is going to benefit from engaging with any of us. So this is a bit
Yep.
of a new experience, this highly
Hmm.
collaborative partnership with fellow grantees, but it's been really neat to be a part of, and I'm so excited to see it continue.
Me
Um,
too.
some other partnerships we've been able to develop through the Lung Association. We've got some really great working relationships with some national organizations, including the National Rural Education Association, National Council on School Facilities, American Academy of Pediatrics, National Association of School Nurses, and many, many more state and local departments of health, departments of instruction, local asthma coalitions, and so much more. So these programs have really and these partners, I should say, have really helped to shape our program, ensuring that it meets the needs of school, that of the schools that we want to serve. And they've been really critical in helping to amplify our messages, share our resources through their networks, and really just overall supporting our efforts. So we're super grateful for these strong relationships and partnerships.
Well, and I will say too, to all of our listeners who are taxpayers, we are maximizing and optimizing your investment in these programs by, engaging in this collaboration, making sure that we're complementing one another's work and that, we're spreading the benefits of these dollars out as far and wide as we possibly can throughout the country. There's a lot of school districts to work with, and we're all making sure that we're, really spreading all the benefits out. And I really appreciate the thought behind that with all of our partnerships. For school staff who may be listening, and I hope you all are, tell us the steps that schools need to follow in order to engage with the American Lung Association on the Clean Air School Challenge program and what they will receive from you guys to help them manage their indoor air quality.
So, schools interested in learning more about the Clean Air School Challenge can visit our website, lung.org/CASC. Again, that's CASC. This is where you can find those fact sheets and resources I mentioned earlier, find out details about our mini grant program and other opportunities, as well as sign up to participate in the Clean Air School Challenge. So any K through 12 school in the country is able to sign up for the Clean Air School Challenge. And participation in CASC is really a commitment by the school to address IAQ and work towards implementing an energy efficient IAQ management plan. We invite schools who are just getting started on their IAQ journey and schools who are more, seasoned veterans.
Mhm.
And one of the things that makes our program a little bit unique is that we are focused on the individual school and not
Mhm.
necessarily the district. So CASC recognizes that each school building has unique challenges and opportunities when it comes to IAQ. So we are really empowering schools to assess their buildings and develop a plan to address their unique needs. Often that plan development process is done in collaboration with district staff. But this approach follows more of a bottom up versus a top down approach.
Gotcha.
For a lot of the schools that we're working with, we do see district leadership that, is really facilitating their school's participation in the program. So sometimes a district staff, whether it be a facilities manager or superintendent, they will take the lead to sign up their individual schools and coordinate the efforts across the schools in their district. Other times that sign up into our program is coming straight from the school themselves. So schools ready to, sign up for CASC, we really only need one thing, and that is support from a school administrator. So this just
Mhm.
helps to ensure that when a school signs on to be a school within their Clean Air School Challenge, that there is that commitment from leadership to advance this work so that that school is able to really hit the ground running after they sign up.
Absolutely. And actually, Molly, that's a great model, and it's kind of the flip of our model where we start with school districts, and I think it's really complementary. We're going to have
Yeah.
to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we have much more with Molly Ryan of the American Lung Association, so don't go away, folks. There's more Go Green Radio right after this. Welcome back to Go Green Radio, everybody. We are so pleased to be talking to Molly Ryan of the American Lung Association about their Clean Air School Challenge to help improve indoor air quality in schools across America. Molly, what are some of the biggest challenges that schools will face if they're just starting the process of managing their indoor air quality? And how does your program help them overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I think schools can sometimes be overwhelmed when they first start to dip their toes into the world of IAQ. We've talked a lot about how schools are very complex environments, how indoor air quality and air quality in general is a very complex topic. So, it's not for a lack in desire to improve environmental conditions for their student staff. It's just, it can sometimes feel like a very daunting task to just get started. So this is where the Clean Air School Challenge can really help. So our program was developed to provide schools with a structured path and supports along the way to work towards an energy efficient IAQ management plan. Our program is built on the EPA's Tools for School framework, which is, as you know, widely considered to be a gold standard in this space. And it's really the Clean Air School Challenge has three different phases that a school can sort of follow along on that path. The first phase is assess. So this is really around assessing those indoor air quality and energy use issues and opportunities. The second phase is plan, where schools are drafting their energy efficient IAQ management plan. And the final phase is act, where schools are taking action to remediate any of the issues found in the assessment and implementing their management plan. So schools that sign up for the Clean Air School Challenge are entered into one of these phases, and they're able to sort of advance or graduate to those higher phases once they complete key steps or key activities. Now, I mention these phases because our mini grants are also tied to these phases. So our mini grant opportunities, there are different funding levels for each of these phases: assess, plan, and act. So a school can apply for all three levels of funding and receive up to $9,500. And again, a school district, if coordinating the application from their schools, can receive up to $95,000 in total for the district. So this is really can make an impactful difference in supporting schools in advancing their IAQ goals.
Absolutely. I'm curious, if you've got some school districts that have, or schools that have actually done this work and they're working towards improving indoor air quality, what are they saying about that work and about how they feel about this journey of improving indoor air quality for their students and staff?
I think school leaders can definitely, feel a sense of pride in their efforts to improve their learning environments for not only their students, but their staff. But I also think there is a tremendous sense of relief as a result of this shift of going from being more reactive to IAQ issues to a position of being proactive and addressing issues before they become problematic. I think, oftentimes we see school leaders in that reactive mode. They're in this, firefighter mode. They're constantly putting out fires, whether it's, sudden mold discovery, a surge in absences due to respiratory virus, or emergency wildfire smoke event. So that is a really exhausting way to lead. So when they shift to being more proactive, they get out of that crisis mode and they have, more of a, peace of mind that comes from having a solid plan in place that they know they can tap into to prevent issues before it ever reaches that crisis stage. But I think throughout the entire school community, we see this culture shift and a new awareness about the health and well-being of not only our students and staff, but our school buildings. So when a leader tackles IAQ, teachers and staff feel seen and valued. It's one of the more tangible ways that a school leadership can say your health and your daily comfort matter to us. We're going to make changes to the environment to better, the situation. And that
Mm-hmm.
investment in that more human side of this work, really pays back in not only higher staff morale, but also staff retention. And we also see a lot of gratitude coming from parents. I think in this post-COVID era where we find ourselves in, we're all a little bit more aware of the air we breathe. So if you're hearing that your child's school is taking those active steps to improve the learning environment, it can, build a certain amount of trust. So I think there's definitely a lot for a school leader to be proud of when they're working on IAQ.
Agreed. No, that well said. Thanks for that, Molly. And I'm wondering, we have listeners who might be students, might be parents, that want to, get involved somehow and make their school aware of your program. What is an appropriate role for students, and parents to play in all of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. We talked earlier about how one of the challenges school faces is really around capacity. So I think students and parents both can not only help to address that gap, but they have such a valuable perspective to this work overall that they really should be at the table. So when it comes to students, a couple of really neat ideas that we've seen is that really using students in that as a citizen scientist. We can
Hmm.
equip students with the skills and knowledge to conduct key parts of the school IAQ assessment and building walkthrough. So instead of relying on the facility manager to go and check 50 classrooms, we can engage several students or entire science class to go to these different classrooms and make observations of the conditions that might be contributing to poor or good indoor air quality. They can really provide that boots on the ground. I think for students as well, there's a lot of opportunity for leadership development. A lot of really successful IAQ programs in schools rely heavily on an IAQ management team that's made up of diverse individuals coming together to really tackle IAQ for their school or district. So having student perspective and as well as a parent perspective on that IAQ management team can just be really, really awesome for just the overall work that's happening. So I think just empowering students and teachers to use their voice to be advocates for this work, as well as being a part of the solution are just some really, really neat ways to incorporate really all members of the school community.
Totally agree. And I think it's important to have all of the humans involved in this very human issue. I mean, we talk about indoor air quality, but at the end of the day, what we're talking about is the health of human beings. If you are successful in meeting all of the goals of your grant, how do you think things will be different for the children in the schools with which you guys will be working? How will their experience at school change?
So, I mean, this is really such a critical question. This is the why behind what we do. So, if we meet our goals, the school environment really stops being this place where students and teachers have to just endure physically or they just have to get through the day, right? It
Hmm.
becomes a place where they can actually thrive, where they can be fully present, ready to learn and teach and just excel. And I go back to the example of asthma because it's just such a poignant example. So I think about that student with asthma, and success for her means she isn't spending her mornings in the nurse's office or her afternoons in the emergency room.
Hmm.
She's in her seat, she's engaged, she isn't worrying about when her next asthma attack will hit. So we're really giving her back her time and her peace of mind. But really, for all students and staff, it's really around ensuring they're breathing cleaner air, meaning they're just doing better overall. And we're creating safe and healthier environments for everyone to reach their full potential.
That sounds so wonderful and so doable. And I'm really excited to see how all of this unfolds. On a personal note, Molly, how does this work impact you? When you reflect on the opportunities that you have ahead, how do you feel about your daily work?
Yeah, this work is so personal for a number of reasons. So I am someone who is chemically sensitive. I know firsthand what it's like to be in an environment that makes you feel unwell. When I smell certain scents, certain VOCs from fragrances or cleaning products, I have an immediate physical reaction, headaches, nausea, finding it really hard to focus. But as an adult, I have agency to leave the room. I have the language to explain to someone, hey, this scent is really making me sick.
Hmm.
So when I look at the schools we work with, I think about the 5-year-old in the class in a kindergarten classroom. They can't just walk out of their class if they start to feel unwell. They often don't have the vocabulary to even explain why they're not feeling well. They just feel yucky, and that can really impact their learning. I'm also a parent of two young children, and so I know what it's like, all of that anxiety when you're dropping your kiddo off and sending them through the through those school doors every day, expecting they're going to be looked after, cared for, and supported.
Hmm.
I realize this
Absolutely.
work is, yeah, it's really around ensuring that my children and everybody else's children is breathing the best possible air they can,
I love
and
it.
and just yeah.
Absolutely, Molly. Well said. And wish I could just reach to the airwaves, give you a big hug. It was so great having this conversation with you, and I'm excited to continue working with the American Lung Association. Get out on lung.org/CASC for Clean Air School Challenge and check it out. We are going to be here same time, same place next week with more Go Green Radio. Until then, have a wonderful week and do something in your life